Hello and welcome. I am Paco Garcia and this is GMS Magazine at Spiel 2017. This is the preparation day where the action actually happens. So I thought that it would be a great idea to start with the person who is possibly the Vin Diesel of the gaming world, because if anybody has seen action in the last couple of years in the gaming industry, Justin, it's been you. Because Wizkids, you have not stopped for a second. How is it going?
It's going well. We've spent a lot of our the last 4 or 5 years really transforming the company from a miniatures company, primarily with HeroClix being at the center of that, to a company that is multi-category. So we now do HeroClix, Dice Masters, board games, RPG figures, and obviously Games Workshop, as we announced last week.
Yes. Okay. Let's start with that because I'm sure that plenty of people are going to be super curious, and obviously I include myself in those. How did that happen?
So when the opportunity presented itself about 13 months ago, when FFG and Games Workshop announced their splitting, I literally sent an email to Games Workshop and said, "Hey, I'm coming to London. Thought I'd stop by." That was 13 months ago, and we've been talking with them on and off for the better part of that time, and slowly but surely we made progress towards what we think is a great deal, and I hope they think so too.
Well, I think, in fairness, it should be a great deal for everybody because the Games Workshop IP is very much loved by an awful lot of people, although they do get criticism for pricing and not being in touch with their public, etc. But the truth is that games in the past have actually sold very well. Are you planning on continue with those gamings or with those games, or are you actually going to develop new games?
So the scope of the agreement that we have with Games Workshop is threefold. One, we're going to do 40K Dice Masters, or a boxed version of Dice Masters where everything that you need is in the box, so non-collectible. Two, we're going to republish a couple of their old titles, Fury of Dracula and Relic. And three, we'll be pitching them 2 or 3 new games over the course of the next year. And if they like them, we'll publish them. If they don't, we'll go back to the drawing board.
Is your involvement going to be just published games, or are they also going to help you with the mini production, design, sculpture, that sort of aspects?
So as the deal stands right now, there will be no minis in the games, for obvious reasons. At some level, we both make miniatures for a consumer. So that was pretty keen on getting to that understanding early in the conversation, that this was not going to be a miniatures relationship. But as you know, that IP, both IPs that they create are very rich and wonderful worlds. And so we found a lot of different ways to kind of get involved with them. So we took minis off the table and we said we're going to republish and do some new publishing and Dice Masters.
I presume the games obviously are going to be themed in their worlds. Is it just going to be 40K that you will be publishing, or will you be able to expand into fantasy, Lord of the Rings, etc.?
So our current deal is for 40K. They've been open to hearing pitches for everything. Not Lord of the Rings, obviously. We'd have to go to Warner Brothers for that as well. But 40K primarily, and as the opportunities present themselves, we'll go to them and ask them, does fantasy work for this? And then obviously we'd amend our deal.
The Dice Master games, are the rules going to be perfectly compatible with any of the Dice Master games that you have already published, or are they going to have some rules specifically to tailor for that Warhammer universe?
So it will be 100% compatible to the collectible version of the game, just to be encapsulated in a box. There will obviously, on the collectible version, we thematically create rules that fit the IP. That doesn't mean that it's not compatible. It's just something unique for Games Workshop for 40K.
And I presume the IP development, it will still be down to Games Workshop if they decide to expand on that universe. If they decided to do so, will you have access to the new features of the Warhammer universe?
So we haven't talked about that specifically. I would assume once it becomes canon, that would become available to us. We tend to like to stay in the kind of core world and things that have been developed and tested, consumer tested for that matter. That's our personal preference, but should the need or opportunity arise to kind of go day and date with new IP, we'd be happy to do so too.
I'm very curious about something. The Warhammer Games Workshop customer is a very loyal customer. They really like the game. They really enjoy the products, regardless of any kind of pricing controversy there is. How are you, because the games are going to be so different in terms of components and rules and everything, how or what are you going to do to appeal to those gamers to actually get Wizkids games as well?
So I think the way we look at it is we have an IP. Our objective isn't to necessarily go to a Games Workshop player and say, come play Dice Masters. There's three groups as far as we are concerned. There's general consumer gamer, there is Dice Masters player, and there's Games Workshop player. Now, they spend a lot of money on Games Workshop products as it is. We would hope that this could be kind of the in-between game for them. But Dice Masters players should enjoy this game thoroughly. And general population, just the general gaming consumer, we think we have a great game in Dice Masters. We know that it appealed to quite a few board gamers, whether it was in the form of Quarriers or that first couple releases of Dice Masters. What we found is as the collectability model grew, some of those board gamers kind of lost patience for kind of the collectible model. And so our objective here is to put a boxed game in front of both a Dice Masters player, the general gamer consumer, and, for that Games Workshop player that might need something in between or just to kind of whet his appetite for his next game or in between downtime, this might be a good game for them.
How are you actually going to market those games? Do you have any plans to do some kind of tournament scheme so people can engage in game shops or club level or something to actually, to have some tournament going on?
So Dice Masters DNA is the tournament-based game. We have been talking about this, so we haven't fully fleshed out our plans yet. What we think we'll have is some casual in-store play for the events. We'll, of course, support them at all of our major conventions, Gen Con, Origins, Essen. But the thrust of the push right now is much more of a casual competitive versus cutthroat competitive. We just don't think that's where the market's going. And when you look at the rise of the board games, you also see this general aversion for winner-takes-all type of games. So we're going to modify our plans a little bit and go off of Dice Master strategy and move to a more casual, friendly, even play-at-home type of tournament scene, if that makes sense.
It does. It does make perfect sense to me. Now, I'm very curious. I could spend the rest of the day asking you questions about that, which will probably get boring for some people. But I'm also very curious to find how is actually Wizkids doing within the gaming world yourself? Because in the last few years, we have seen an awful lot of companies growing very fastly. Fastly. That's an invented word, listeners. Don't use that at home.
It's like bigly.
Yeah, exactly. Or muchly. Very quickly, especially Asmodee, they have expanded brutally. How has that affected a company of now middle size? Because before you were a big guy, now compared with Asmodee, Wizkids kind of looks a little bit middle ground than it used to be. How has that affected you, the growth?
So I never begrudge a competitor for doing what's best for their business. And so Asmodee's growth has been remarkable to watch, actually. They have consolidated a lot of the industry, and a lot of good will come out of that. But like anything, the good is often offset by the bad. I mean, it's a huge company, a lot of players. I'm sure there's a lot of politics. I'm sure the communication is difficult. Integrating a business like that is very challenging. And so, as we look at them, I actually have a lot of friends that work there, whether that would be at FFG or as DVM, or all the divisions that they've kind of amassed into one big company. We wish them well. They are our friends. And that's the thing about this industry, is that you have friends, they're frenemies at some level. And so you hope that they do well. One of the kind of core philosophies that we have at Wizkids is of course we watch our competition, but a professor, one of my good friends in college said, don't get closer to your competitor, get closer to the consumer. And so while we watch them, we act rather independently of that kind of suspicion or competitive response, and we try to do things that are good for the consumer within the framework of the bigger industry. And so while it presents some challenges, there are some opportunities as well. I mean, big companies tend to move slowly. We actually keep a very streamlined organization for that exact reason. We want communication to be quick, direct, and make decisions quickly. Not a lot of debate, not a lot of voting or key stakeholder involvement. We find a good idea and we make it happen. And I think that is kind of been our core ethos for the last 7 years. And I see no reason to change that. And in fact, it probably serves us better in a world with big competitors around. Allows us to move quickly within that framework.
And I see also I know you personally have always been a massive advocate of being very close, as you said earlier, to the consumer. What are going to be your lines of communications for the consumer now that you're growing? How are you going to keep that going to make sure that you know what the consumer is actually doing? Because we were talking in Facebook recently about the proximity and how understanding what the consumer wants is what's bringing an awful lot of people into a great deal of success. How are you going to keep on doing that while you are actually expanding as well?
So it's a good question, and it's actually challenging, and I don't have all the answers. What I can tell you is that we're very transparent about our business, and we're very involved. The key management team is on Facebook, on Twitch, on social media constantly. And if you look at how marketing has changed within our industry, it's moved much more from print ads and website takeovers to Facebook, Twitter, and streaming. And you'll see that as a big push for us, getting involved. We're giving a presentation here at the show to retailers. And so our primary mechanism to communicate is through our retail channel. We don't sell direct to consumer, so we don't have a one-to-one relationship with the consumer per se. What we do have is one-to-one relationships with the stores. And those stores have relationships with 30, 40, 50, 100 consumers. So what I hope to do is increase our level of dialogue with the retailer, particularly the European retailer, and have them re-communicate that out to their player bases, and then we will step in to support that or buttress that effort on social media. When we announced Games Workshop, I made a big effort to answer every single question that I was made aware of. Every single one. I spent the better part of 2 days just thanking people, saying thank you, and all the well wishes, and really responding and trying to answer the questions about, does this have HeroClix in it? Well, no, it doesn't, and that's for another day. What will you be doing? Well, we'll be doing Fury and Relic. So that kind of grassroots effort by my staff, and then a concerted, centralized effort with communicating to the retailers. Because at the end, the retailers magnify our voice exponentially. So one message to them, that turns into a message to 50. And that is what we're trying to do.
And what next? I mean, just to finish the interview, what next?
I don't even know if it's possible to say that there would be a bigger announcement in the Games Workshop, but there's certainly some big announcements coming. At PAX Unplugged, we'll be talking about something new, and we hope to have as much success with that property and excitement as we do for Games Workshop too. So, good.
Well, if that is not a cliffhanger, nothing else. So Justin, thank you so much. Best of luck at the show. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing.
Thanks.